The massive holographic face appeared without warning over every major city on Earth. Emperor Vexthul's reptilian features filled the sky above New York, Tokyo, London, and Seoul. His golden eyes blazed with the arrogance of someone who had conquered 1,000 worlds. The creature's voice boomed across the planet in perfect human languages, translated by technology beyond Earth's understanding. Primitive humans of the third planet. The Emperor's words echoed through streets where millions of people stood, frozen, staring upward. I am Vexthul, supreme ruler of the Galactic Dominion. Your species has been discovered. Your world has been evaluated. You will submit to imperial rule within one rotation of your planet, or your entire species will be eliminated. In the underground bunkers of the United Earth Defense Center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Gina Park felt her blood turn cold. She had been expecting this day for 3 years, ever since the deep space monitoring stations had detected the alien signals. But expecting something and experiencing it were completely different things. Gina was 42 years old, born in Busan, but raised in military academies around the world. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for threats that might come from the stars. Her parents had been farmers, simple people who grew rice and vegetables. They never imagined their daughter would one day stand between humanity and extinction. The command center buzzed with controlled panic. Dozens of officers and analysts worked at their stations, their faces illuminated by the glow of tactical displays and communication screens. The main holographic display showed what every human on Earth now feared to see: 300 alien warships arranged in perfect formation around their planet. Each ship was the size of a city block, bristling with weapons that could crack continents. Admiral Hyun Kim report, Gina called out to the elderly man studying the fleet deployment. Hyun had served in 3 different navies during his career, starting as a young ensign in the Korean Navy before the unification wars. His hair was completely gray now, but his mind remained sharp as a blade. Commander, our defensive situation is not good, Hyun said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of military experience. We have 57 ships that can fight in space. Most of them are cargo haulers and mining vessels we converted with weapons over the past 2 years. Our largest warship is the CNS Beijing, and it's smaller than their smallest escort craft. Around the room, other officers provided their reports. Colonel Minji Ko announced that ground-based defenses were ready but untested. Major Sion Lee confirmed that the planetary shield generators were operating at full power, though no one knew how long they would hold against alien weapons. Captain Dae-jung reported that evacuation procedures were underway in major cities, but moving 7 billion people would take weeks they didn't have. The alien transmission crackled back to life. Emperor Vexthul's image reappeared on every screen. In the command center, "You have received our terms, humans. What is your response? Will you kneel before the Dominion and accept your place as servants, or will you choose the path of destruction?" Gina looked around the room at the faces of Earth's defenders. She saw fear, yes, but also determination. These were people who had spent their lives preparing for this moment, even when most of humanity thought alien contact was just science fiction. She thought about her parents, probably watching this broadcast from their small farm. She thought about the children in schools around the world, looking up at the sky in wonder and terror. "Patch me through to global communications," Gina ordered. "All networks, all frequencies, every device on the planet." The communications officer nodded. "You're live, Commander. The whole world is listening." Gina stepped forward to the main communication array. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Everything humanity had ever been, everything they might become, balanced on the words she was about to speak. Her voice was steady, carrying no trace of the fear that gnawed at her heart. "Emperor Vexthul," she began, looking directly into the camera that would carry her words to the alien fleet. "You offer us a choice between slavery and death. You believe we will choose slavery because that is what 1,000 other species have chosen before us. You expect us to beg for mercy, to offer you tribute, to fall to our knees and accept whatever scraps of dignity you might allow us to keep." She paused, letting her words sink in across both the human world and the alien fleet. "But you have made a fundamental error in your calculations. You do not understand what humans are. We are the species that looked at an endless ocean and decided to cross it in wooden boats. We are the people who saw mountains and chose to climb them. We built machines that let us fly when nature gave us no wings. We split atoms and touched the moon and turned deserts into gardens. Her voice grew stronger, carrying the defiance of every human who had ever refused to surrender in the face of impossible odds. Most importantly, Emperor Vexthal, we have never learned to kneel properly. Our answer is no, humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not submit. If you want our world, you will have to take it from our dead hands. The transmission ended. For a moment, complete silence filled the command center. Then, slowly, applause began to spread through the room. Not the polite clapping of a formal ceremony, but the fierce, desperate applause of people who knew they might be about to die, but were proud of how they would face that death. Emperor Vexthal's response came within minutes. The first plasma bolts, bright as miniature suns, began hammering Earth's defensive shields. The war for humanity's survival had begun. Captain Minho Lee had never expected to die in space. Growing up in Daegu, he had dreamed of being a teacher, like his father. But when the alien signals were first detected 3 years ago, everything changed. The government converted civilian ships into warships, and teachers became soldiers. Now at 35 years old, Minho found himself commanding the destroyer Soul's Pride, as it charged directly into an alien formation that could vaporize his ship with a single shot. The bridge around him was cramped and smelled of hot metal and recycled air. Unlike the sleek alien vessels surrounding them, Soul's Pride was basically a cargo hauler, with missile pods welded to its hull and armor plates bolted wherever they would fit. The crew of 43 people had trained together for only 8 months, but they moved with the desperate efficiency of people who knew they were Earth's last hope. Distance to target formation, 2,000 kilometers and closing, called out Navigator Unisong from her station. Her hands flew over the controls, plotting a course that would take them through the heart of the enemy fleet. They're not moving to intercept. I think they're confused by our approach. Minho understood the aliens' confusion. Every species they had conquered before fought defensively, trying to protect their worlds from a safe distance. Humans were doing the opposite, charging straight at ships 10 times their size with weapons blazing. It went against every military doctrine the Empire had ever encountered. "All weapons, fire at will," Minho shouted over the growing roar of the engines. "Show these aliens what humans do when cornered." The ship's missile tubes launched everything. They had. 36 nuclear warheads streaked toward the alien formation, followed by a stream of railgun rounds that glowed white-hot from atmospheric friction. The Soul's Pride shuddered as return fire began to hammer their shields, but Minho's crew held their positions like they had been trained. 3 decks below, engineer Sora Choi crawled through a maintenance tunnel that was never meant for human bodies. She had grown up fixing farm equipment in Jeju Island, and her small hands could reach places that larger people couldn't. Now those same hands worked frantically to reroute power cables, while alien plasma bolts shook the ship around. "Her bridge, this is engineering," she called through her headset while sparks showered down from damaged conduits. "I can give you 40% more power to weapons, but I'll have to shut down life support in sections 7 through 12. "Do it," came Minho's immediate response. "If we're going to die, let's take some of them with us." Sora didn't hesitate. She pulled the life support relays and redirected everything to the weapon systems. The ship's missiles suddenly hit twice as hard, and their railgun fire increased to a continuous stream of tungsten rounds. 2 alien escort ships exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up the darkness of space. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Lieutenant Tae-won crouched in a camouflaged bunker built into the side of Mount Jiri. For 2 years, his artillery unit had been preparing for this moment, carving massive railgun installations into solid rock and disguising them as natural mountain faces. The aliens had no idea that half of Korea's mountains were actually weapon emplacements. "Target acquired," reported Corporal Inho Park, tracking an alien cruiser through his targeting scope. "Range 400,000 kilometers, bearing 27 Mark 5. Tae-won had been an engineer before the war, building bridges and tunnels. He understood physics, and he knew that their railgun could accelerate a tungsten rod to 12% of light speed. At that velocity, even a small projectile carried the destructive power of a nuclear bomb. "Fire," he ordered. The mountain shook as the railgun discharged. Deep underground, massive capacitors released all their stored energy in a single pulse that sent a tungsten rod screaming through space. The projectile was only 2 meters long and 20 centimeters wide, but it struck the alien cruiser with enough force to punch completely through its hull and out the other side. The ship broke apart in a cascade of explosions that could be seen from Earth's surface. All across the planet, similar scenes played out. Hidden weapon installations revealed themselves as cities and mountains opened up to unleash devastating fire on the alien fleet. Missile silos that had been disguised as office buildings launched nuclear warheads. Laser batteries concealed in what looked like radio towers began carving through alien hulls with beams of concentrated light. The aliens had expected to face a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had spent years preparing for this exact scenario. Human military doctrine was based on a simple principle: if you can't match your enemy's strength, you better be smarter, faster, and more willing to take risks. Captain Minho Lee watched his tactical display as more alien ships began to break apart under concentrated human fire. His own ship was badly damaged, with hull breaches on 3 decks and fires burning in the engine room. But they were still fighting. Around him, his crew worked with the kind of desperate courage that only came from defending your homeworld. "Sir, the aliens are changing formation," reported Navigator Yuna Song. "They're pulling back from close orbit." In the command bunker, beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Gina Park stared at the main tactical display in amazement. The alien fleet, which had seemed invincible just hours before, was actually retreating. Ships that had never known defeat were limping away from Earth's gravity well, many of them trailing atmosphere and debris. "They're running," whispered Admiral Hyun Kim in disbelief. The old officer had fought in conventional wars his entire life, but he had never seen anything like this. A technologically inferior force had just driven off an enemy that outnumbered them 6-1. Gina Park studied the tactical display more carefully. Her years of strategic training told her something different. "No," she corrected, watching. "The alien ships regroup at the edge of the solar system. They're not running, they're regrouping. This was just their opening move. They expected us to surrender after a show of force, and when we didn't, they got caught off guard." She turned to address the room full of exhausted but celebrating officers. "Don't let your guard down. We bloodied their nose, but we haven't won anything yet. They'll be back, and next time they won't underestimate us." The first battle was over, but the war for humanity's survival had only just begun. Captain Junho Park floated in zero gravity, checking the magnetic clamps that held stolen alien weapon systems to his ship's hull. 3 months had passed since Earth's impossible victory, and everything had changed. The planet that had once seemed so defenseless was now launching strike missions deep into enemy territory. Junho's ship, the Incheon Runner, looked nothing like the cargo hauler it had been 6 months ago. Originally, the Incheon Runner had carried rice and electronics between Earth and the Mars colonies. Junho had been a simple merchant captain, transporting goods and occasionally passengers who couldn't afford the fancy passenger liners. His biggest worry had been avoiding space pirates and making sure his cargo arrived on time. Now his ship bristled with alien plasma cannons and human-made missile pods, and his cargo hold was filled with nuclear warheads instead of rice. "Captain, we're approaching the target zone," called out sensor operator Yuna Song from her station, near the front of the cramped bridge. She had been a communications specialist on a mining station before the war started. When the aliens attacked, she had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment possible: deep space reconnaissance behind enemy lines. "I'm picking up multiple contacts ahead. Looks like a supply convoy, just like intelligence predicted." Junho pulled himself over to the main tactical display, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plates. The screen showed 5 alien ships moving in formation through the asteroid belt of the Proxima system. 3 large cargo vessels escorted by 2 smaller warships, exactly the kind of target they had been hunting for weeks. His crew of 30 volunteers had spent the last month learning to work together in the cramped confines of their converted ship. Most of them had never been in space before the war. Engineer Dae Kim had fixed motorcycles in Busan, Weapons specialist Hana Cho had been a high school chemistry teacher. Pilot Kang Min had flown crop dusters over the rice fields of the Nakdong River Valley. None of them had expected to become space pirates fighting for humanity's survival. "What's the escort strength?" Junho asked, studying the enemy formation. "Two light cruisers, older models," Yuna reported, her fingers dancing over her sensor controls. "The cargo ships are big, but barely armed. This looks like a routine supply run. They're not expecting trouble this deep in their own territory." That was exactly what Junho had been hoping to hear. For 3 months, human raiders had been hitting alien supply lines throughout this sector of space. The Empire was vast, spanning hundreds of star systems, and they couldn't guard every cargo ship. Most of their military was focused on the front lines, leaving their supply routes vulnerable to small, fast-moving raiders. Pilot Kang Min brought the ship around on a silent approach vector, using the asteroids for cover. He had learned to fly in the cramped cockpit of an old crop duster, navigating by sight through mountain valleys and over rice paddies. Space was different, but the principles were the same. Stay low, use cover, and don't let the enemy see you. "Coming. All stations prepare for attack," Junho announced over the ship's intercom. "Remember the plan. We go in fast, hit their supplies, and get out before reinforcements arrive. We're not here to win a big battle. We're here to make their lives difficult and take whatever intelligence we can find." The attack began when they were still 2,000 kilometers away. The Incheon Runner's missiles streaked through space, targeted at the escort ship's engine sections. The aliens had better shields and armor, but human weapons were designed to exploit the weaknesses that Earth's scientists had discovered during the first battle. Engineer Dae Kim monitored the ship's power systems from his station in the engine room. He had installed the alien technology himself, learning how it worked by taking apart captured equipment piece by piece. The power conduits hummed with barely controlled energy as the ship's hybrid systems pushed beyond their design limits. "Direct. Hit on escort number 1, reported weapons specialist Hana Cho. "Their engines are down. Escort number 2 is moving to intercept, but they're too slow." The battle lasted exactly 12 minutes. When it was over, 3 alien cargo ships drifted empty in space, their hulls cracked open like eggs. The escort ships were disabled but not destroyed. Junho's orders were to avoid unnecessary killing when possible. This was about supplies and information, not revenge. "Boarding teams go," Junho ordered. "I want everything: cargo, computer files, navigation data, personal logs, anything that might tell us about other alien operations in this sector." Most valuable discovery came from the convoy's communication logs. Deep in the alien computer systems, hidden in routine supply requisitions and shipping manifests, was information that changed everything. The logs contained references to other species throughout the galaxy, races that had been conquered by the Empire but were still causing problems for their new rulers. There were mentions of the Corvani, a mining species that kept having industrial accidents that destroyed their equipment. The Thekmari, who were supposed to provide food to the Empire but whose harvests kept failing mysteriously. The Zephyrians, whose tribute shipments had a strange tendency to get lost in space. Back on Earth, General Sion Lee studied the intelligence, reports in her office deep beneath the Himalayan mountains. She had been a logistics coordinator before the war, managing supply chains for multinational corporations. Now she applied those same skills to coordinating humanity's war effort across multiple star systems. The reports painted a picture that filled her with hope. Humanity wasn't alone in their resistance against the Empire. Across the galaxy, dozens of other species were fighting back in their own ways. Some used sabotage, others passive resistance. A few had attempted open rebellion but had been crushed by superior alien firepower. "They're all waiting for someone to show them that resistance is possible," she explained to her staff during their morning briefing. "Every species the Empire has conquered has been forced to fight alone. They've never seen what happens when multiple worlds coordinate their efforts." The intelligence data included star charts showing the locations of these oppressed species throughout the sector. Many of them were only a few light-years away from human-controlled space. With the right approach, contact could be established within weeks. General Sion Lee made the decision that would transform a human rebellion into a galactic revolution. Send teams to make contact with these species, she ordered, if we're going to fight an empire that spans the galaxy. We'll need allies who understand what we're fighting for. The war was about to get much bigger. The ruins of Geneva stretched out before Major In-ho Kim like broken teeth against the grey sky. What had once been the proud headquarters of international organizations was now a wasteland of twisted metal and collapsed buildings. For 14 months, the alien Fourth Armada had maintained their blockade of Earth, and for 14 months, In-ho had been making their occupation as miserable as possible. In-ho crouched behind the remains of what used to be a coffee shop, studying the alien supply depot through his binoculars. Before the war, he had been a high school history teacher in Gwangju, explaining to bored teenagers how previous generations had fought for freedom. Now he was living that history, leading a resistance cell of 43 people who had refused to surrender even when their world seemed lost. His team was a mix of former soldiers, police officers, and ordinary citizens who had lost everything to the invasion. Dr. Minji Ko had been a pediatrician before the aliens bombed her hospital. Now she served as the cell's medic and explosive expert, having learned to make bombs from medical supplies and household chemicals. Sergeant Wu Park had been a Seoul police officer who specialized in crowd control. Now he taught civilians how to fight trained alien soldiers with nothing but determination and improvised weapons. The supply depot is lightly guarded, In-ho whispered into his radio headset. 2 sentries at the main gate, 1 patrol walking the perimeter every 20 minutes. The aliens are getting lazy. They think we're beaten. The depot contained food, medical supplies, and ammunition intended for the alien garrison controlling southern Europe. More importantly, it held communication equipment that would let the resistance coordinate with other cells across the continent. For months, human resistance groups had been operating in isolation, each thinking they were alone in their fight. Tonight would change that. Team Alpha, move to position 1, In-ho ordered. Team Beta, circle around to the back entrance. Remember, we're not here to kill aliens. We're here to take their supplies and show the world that resistance is still possible. The attack was planned for midnight, when the alien guards would be at their most tired and inattentive. In-ho's people moved through the rubble like ghosts, using skills they had learned during months of urban warfare. They had become experts at moving silently through destroyed cities, avoiding alien patrols, and striking targets before disappearing back into the ruins. Meanwhile, millions of kilometers away in deep space, Commander Nari Yoon floated on the bridge of her modified cruiser, Busan's Revenge. The ship had started life as a human patrol vessel, barely large enough for a crew of 15. Now it had been expanded with captured alien technology and served as the flagship for an improvised fleet of rebels from 4 different species. Nari had been a communications officer on a deep space monitoring station before the war. Her job had been to track cargo shipments and relay messages between Earth and the outer colonies. Now she coordinated military operations across 12 star systems, managing a rebellion that grew larger every day. Commander, incoming transmission from the Corvani mining worlds, reported her communications officer, a young Tekmari named Veltar who had joined the rebellion after his homeworld was liberated. They're declaring formal independence from the Empire. The mining guilds have voted to stop all shipments to Imperial worlds. Nari smiled as she reviewed the tactical display, showing rebel activity across known space. Each light represented a world in rebellion, a species that had decided to follow humanity's example. What had started as Earth's desperate fight for survival had become something much larger, a galactic revolution that threatened the Empire's very existence. Send a message to Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them the Tekmari have also stopped providing tribute. Their agricultural worlds are no longer shipping food to Imperial garrison forces. The Empire is now fighting active rebellions on 50 different fronts. The rebellion had spread like wildfire through the galaxy's oppressed populations. Species that had been conquered decades ago suddenly found the courage to resist when they saw that victory against the Empire was possible. Human military advisors, smuggled to rebel worlds by ships like Busan's Revenge, taught alien freedom fighters the tactics that had saved Earth. On Mars, Admiral Hyun Kim stood before a massive tactical display in the underground command center that had become the heart of the human war effort. The red planet had been transformed into a fortress world, its surface covered with weapon installations, and its underground cities filled with refugees from Earth. The display showed the current state of the Galactic Rebellion in real time. Green, lights marked worlds that had declared independence. Yellow lights indicated planets where resistance movements were active but hadn't yet achieved liberation. Red lights showed imperial strongholds where the Empire still maintained control. "Sir, we're receiving reports from 17 different sectors," announced Intelligence Officer Dai Young. "The Corvani have destroyed 3 major mining facilities rather than let them fall back into Imperial hands. The Zephyrian fleet has openly joined our alliance. Even some of the Empire's oldest subject species are beginning to question their loyalty." Admiral Hyun Kim had spent his entire career studying military history, learning from the victories and defeats of previous generations. He understood that what they were witnessing was unprecedented. Never before had the Galactic Empire faced coordinated resistance on this scale. "They wanted to conquer us," he muttered, watching as more worlds switched from red to green on the tactical display. "They thought humans would be just another species to add to their empire. Instead, we're teaching the entire galaxy how to fight back." The numbers were staggering. The Empire had ruled over 800 star systems for more than 2 centuries, maintaining control through superior firepower and the simple fact that no conquered species had ever successfully resisted their rule. Now, less than 2 years after humanity's first contact with the Empire, nearly a quarter of those systems were in open rebellion. But Admiral Hyun Kim was experienced enough to know that their success created new dangers. The Empire's response to widespread rebellion would be swift and brutal. Reports were already coming in of Imperial fleets conducting pacification operations, destroying entire planets rather than allowing them to fall into rebel hands. "Send orders to all human advisors in the field," he instructed his staff. "Tell them to prepare for escalation. The Empire won't accept this level of resistance without fighting back. They're going to start making examples of rebel worlds, and we need to be ready to respond." Back in the ruins of Geneva, Major In-ho Kim and his team slipped away from the alien supply depot, their mission accomplished. They had captured enough supplies to keep the resistance fed for weeks, along with communication equipment that would connect them with other cells across Europe. As they made their way through the destroyed city, In-ho allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Earth might be under siege, but humanity had not been conquered. More importantly, they had lit a fire that was now burning across the galaxy, showing every oppressed species that freedom was possible if they were willing to fight for it. The Empire had made a fatal mistake when they chose to attack humanity. Instead of gaining another conquered world, they had awakened something that would threaten their entire civilization. Colonel Sung Park had never imagined he would command an alien battleship. 2 years ago, he had been a simple infantry officer stationed at the DMZ, watching for threats that never came. Now he stood on the bridge of the Liberation, a massive Imperial warship that his combined human-alien crew had captured during the battle for the Rigel system. The ship's bridge was enormous, designed for the Empire's tall reptilian officers. Human engineers had installed platforms and walkways so that smaller species could reach the control stations. The crew around him represented 5 different worlds: humans from Earth, crystal-skinned Corvani miners, plant-like Thekmari farmers, gaseous Zephyrians who communicated through color changes, and even a few former Imperial soldiers who had defected to the rebel cause. "Colonel, all fleet units report ready for attack," announced Communications Officer Hana Shin, a former Sol traffic controller who now coordinated battle fleets across light years of space. "The combined rebel fleet is in position around Sector Command Vega 7. Through the massive viewports, Seung could see the assembled rebel armada, over 200 ships from dozens of different species. Some were captured Imperial vessels like his own. Others were converted civilian craft, mining ships and cargo haulers that had been turned into improvised warships. What they lacked in uniformity, they made up for in determination. The target was Sector Command Vega 7, a massive space station that controlled Imperial operations across 15 star systems. For decades, It had been the symbol of imperial power in this region of the galaxy. Today, it would become a symbol of liberation. "All units, this is Colonel Park," he broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. "Remember the plan. We're not here to destroy everything and everyone. We're here to free the enslaved populations and show the galaxy that the Empire can be defeated. Civilian areas are off limits. Our fight is with the Imperial military, not with the people they've forced to serve them." This approach had become the hallmark of human military doctrine during the rebellion. While the Empire ruled through fear and overwhelming force, humans won victories by showing oppressed populations that there was an alternative. Every battle was fought with liberation in mind, not conquest. The assault began with electronic warfare. Former Imperial engineer Kang Min, who had defected after witnessing the Empire's brutality on his homeworld, led a team that infiltrated the station's computer systems. Within minutes, they had disabled the early warning systems and opened several docking bays for boarding parties. "First wave launching now," reported Flight Commander Yuna Song from the fighter bay. She had been a civilian pilot before the war, flying tourists around Earth's moon. Now she led a squadron of mixed human and alien fighters in combat operations that would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago. The battle was swift and decisive. Human tactics, refined through 2 years of desperate fighting against superior. Numbers proved devastating when combined with alien technology and multi-species cooperation. The rebels had learned to use each species' natural abilities. Corvani were excellent at close-quarters combat in the station's tight corridors. Fekmari could regrow damaged equipment using their plant-like biology, and Zephyrians could slip through ventilation systems that were impossible for solid beings to navigate. Within 4 hours, Sector Command Vega 7 had fallen. The Imperial garrison surrendered when they realized they were surrounded and outnumbered. Most importantly, the station's vast databanks contained intelligence about Imperial operations across the entire galactic arm. But victory celebrations were cut short when Intelligence Officer Minji Ko burst onto the bridge, her face pale with shock. She had been a university professor before the war, teaching xenobiology to students who thought alien contact was just science fiction. Now she analyzed captured Imperial intelligence, looking for threats to the growing rebellion. "Sir, we have a problem," she announced, her hands shaking as she activated the main holographic display. "The intelligence data from this station, it shows the Empire is deploying stellar collapse weapons. They're not just attacking rebel worlds anymore, they're destroying entire star systems rather than lose them to us." The holographic display showed the horrifying reality. 3 star systems that had declared independence just weeks ago were now empty space. The stars themselves had been artificially collapsed, creating black holes that had consumed everything within several light years. Planets, moons, space stations, and billions of living beings had been erased from existence in moments of imperial spite. Kepler 442 system. Population 8 billion, mostly Tekamari farmers. Minji read from the intelligence report, her voice breaking. Ross 128 system. Population 3 billion, mixed species. Wolf 359 system. Population 12 billion, including 2 million human colonists who had settled there before the war. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Every being present had friends or family members who might have been in those systems. The Tekmari officer at the navigation station made a sound like rustling leaves, the sound his species made when grieving. Several human crew members openly wept. Captain Dae-jung, who served as Xiong's second-in-command, stared at the display in horror. He had grown up in a small fishing village, where the worst thing that could happen was a storm that damaged the boats. The scale of destruction they were witnessing was beyond anything his peaceful upbringing had prepared him for. "They'd rather rule ashes than lose control," he whispered. "The Empire would rather destroy the galaxy than allow it to be free." Colonel Seung Park felt the weight of command pressing down on his shoulders. When this war began, it had been about Earth's survival. Then it became about liberating oppressed species across the galaxy. Now it was about preventing the complete destruction of civilization itself. "How many more systems are they planning to destroy?" he asked Minji. The intelligence officer scrolled through more data, her face growing paler with each report. According to these files, they have stellar collapse weapons positioned in 57 systems. Any world that declares independence or shows signs of rebellion is marked for complete destruction. The rebellion had achieved more success than anyone had dared hope. In just 2 years, they had liberated nearly 300 worlds and inspired resistance movements across the galaxy. But their success had driven the Empire to desperate measures. Rather than accept the loss of their subjects, they were choosing to eliminate them entirely. "Send an emergency transmission to all rebel forces," Seung ordered. "Tell them what we've discovered. Every species in the galaxy needs to know what they're facing. The Empire isn't just trying to conquer us anymore. They're trying to commit genocide on a galactic scale." As the messages went out across the rebel networks, Seung realized that the war had entered a new phase. It was no longer enough to win battles and liberate worlds. They had to stop the Empire before it burned the entire galaxy, rather than lose control of it. The rebellion had lit a fire of freedom across the stars. Now they were in a race against time to prevent that same fire from consuming everything they had fought to save. Admiral Gina Park stood on the command deck of Earth's Defiance, staring out at the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 5 years had passed since that terrible day when Emperor Vexthal first appeared in Earth's skies with his ultimatum. 5 years of desperate fighting, impossible victories, and heartbreaking losses. Now nearly 3,000 ships from 47 different species hung in space around her flagship, preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The woman who had once been a simple commander in Earth's defense forces now carried the hopes of countless worlds on her shoulders. Her hair had turned grey during the Long War, and scars from a dozen battles marked her hands and face, but her eyes still burned with the same determination that had led her to defy an empire when surrender seemed like the only option. "Admiral, all fleet commanders report ready," announced Communications Officer Minji Cho from her station. She had served on Gina's staff since the beginning, growing from a nervous young officer into a veteran coordinator who managed battlefield communications across multiple star systems simultaneously. Through the massive viewports of the flagship's bridge, Gina could see the combined rebel armada spread out across millions of cubic kilometers of space. Human ships flew alongside Corvani mining vessels converted into warships. Tekmari bioships, grown rather than built, pulsed with organic weapon systems. Zephyrian gas cloud fighters shimmered like aurora in the darkness. Even former Imperial vessels, captured during earlier battles and crewed by defectors, had joined the final assault. The target was Vexthal Prime, the Imperial capital world that had ruled the galaxy for over 2 centuries. The planet's surface was covered with massive cities, housing billions of beings from hundreds of conquered species. Its orbital defenses included weapon platforms the size of moons and shield generators that could protect entire continents. Most importantly, it was the location of the Empire's ultimate weapon, a stellar collapse device capable of turning the system's sun into a black hole. "All species, all fleets, this is Admiral Park," Gina broadcast on every frequency used by the Rebel Alliance. 5 years ago, humanity received an ultimatum to surrender or die. We chose a third option, to fight for freedom not just for ourselves, but for every being in the galaxy who had been forced to kneel before Imperial tyranny. Today, we end an empire that would burn the galaxy rather than lose it. The first phase of the battle began with long-range missile exchanges as the rebel fleet approached the outer defense perimeter. Imperial defense platforms, each one capable of destroying entire cities, opened fire with weapons that lit up space like artificial stars. But the rebels had learned much during 5 years of warfare. They came in small, fast groups that scattered and reformed, making themselves difficult targets, while concentrating their fire on key defensive positions. Captain Wu Li commanded a squadron of human destroyers that had been with the fleet since the liberation of the Centauri system. His ships were old and battle-scarred, held together by spare parts and stubborn determination. When the Emperor's personal dreadnought, a vessel the size of a small moon, emerged from behind the planet's largest orbital station, Wu knew what had to be done. "All ships, follow me in," he ordered his squadron. "We're going to take down that monster before it can target the main fleet." His 12 ships accelerated toward the dreadnought at maximum burn, their crews singing old Korean folk songs that their grandparents had taught them, They knew it was a suicide run, but they also knew that someone had to clear the way for the troops who would assault the planet's surface. The squadron lasted exactly 7 minutes against the dreadnought's overwhelming firepower. But in those 7 minutes, they managed to damage the massive ship's shield generators and weapon systems, leaving it vulnerable to the coordinated assault that followed. Wu Li's final transmission was heard across the entire fleet. For Earth, for freedom, for everyone who refuses to kneel. While the space battle raged above, assault shuttles and landing craft began their descent toward the planet's surface. Lieutenant Hannah Shin led a mixed unit of human marines and alien commandos through the burning streets of the imperial capital city. She had been a police officer in Busan before the war, trained to protect and serve her community. Now she fought through alien architecture toward the heart of an empire, leading soldiers from a dozen different worlds. The imperial palace was a massive structure that rose from the center of the capital like a golden mountain. Its halls had witnessed the subjugation of countless species over 2 centuries of imperial rule. Now those same halls echoed with the sounds of liberation as rebel forces fought their way through desperate imperial guards. Emperor Vexthul made his final stand in the throne room, where he had issued his ultimatum to Earth 5 years earlier. The ancient reptilian ruler was surrounded by the artifacts of 1,000 conquered worlds, trophies taken from species that had dared to resist imperial rule. When Hannah Shin and her marines finally breached the throne room doors, they found him standing beside a control console that could activate the stellar collapse weapon. "You have won nothing," the Emperor hissed, his clawed hands hovering over the activation controls. "If I cannot rule this galaxy, then no one shall inherit it. I will turn our sun into a black hole that will consume everything within 50 light years." His last words were a curse that echoed through the burning palace. "If I cannot rule, let all burn." But when he pressed the activation controls, nothing happened. The stellar collapse device, which should have begun the process of destroying the system's sun, remained silent. Emperor Vexthul's reptilian features twisted in confusion and rage as he pressed the controls again and again, unable to understand why his ultimate weapon refused to obey. General Sora Choi materialized on the throne room's communication screen, her image transmitted from the orbital weapons platform, where the stellar collapse device was housed. The former engineer had spent months planning the sabotage, working with a team of rebel scientists and defected Imperial technicians to disable the weapon without alerting the Empire's security systems. "Your weapon is dead, Emperor," she announced, calmly. "We've been inside your systems for months waiting for this moment. The galaxy will not burn today." With his final weapon neutralized and his capital city burning around him, Emperor Vexithul's 2-century reign came to an end. The being who had terrorized 1,000 worlds fell not to superior firepower, but to the simple determination of species who had learned that freedom was worth any sacrifice. Standing in the ruins of the imperial throne room, surrounded by the artifacts of conquest that would soon be returned to their rightful owners, Admiral Gina Park addressed the galaxy through every communication network the rebels had captured. "The Empire is dead," she announced to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "What comes next is up to all of us together. We did not fight this war to replace one empire with another. We fought so that every species, every world, every being could choose their own destiny without fear." The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson, taught through 5 years of desperate warfare and impossible victory. Sometimes you have to fight not to conquer, but to ensure that no one else ever has to kneel again. Freedom, once lit, burns. Cross the stars until it reaches every corner of the darkness. The war was over. The real work of building a free galaxy was just beginning.